0. We're oh my god,
We
that
are live. We've been live for like 11 seconds at that. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Chaotic Text Study. This is Pastor Abel Arroyo. I use pronouns like they and he.
I'm Pastor Matthew Zemanek, and I use pronouns like he and they. I'm just so glad you're here at Chaotic Bisexual Text Study, everyone. How are you? How was that? How was
I just came back from Costa Rica, and let me tell you, every single time I'm like there, I'm like, oh yeah, this is what it looks like when I'm doing things from like a healthy space. Like, it's just wild how much just working in a place that is not completely oppressive helps. So super happy to have been there to reconnect with people, to just be. Like, I was talking to a friend of mine and I was telling her how it was really nice just to be able to think in Spanish for more than 20 minutes at a time. So oh no, I'm just refreshed and rested, even though I've been working and doing some like extra stuff, you know?
That's real. Good for you. I'm happy for you. You deserve that.
Thank you.
Oh, thinking. What a time. What was I gonna say? Anyway, what's up with me? I'm just here. I'm getting ready for vacation. I'm proud of myself for thinking about future me, of when I get back from vacation. So I don't overcommit myself. Future me, because past me is being considerate of future me.
Good for you. I love that.
Uh, and I'm like, I don't have any big projects until after October. I have all of the ones that I need to complete right now. Thank you.
Bye.
I'm setting my boundaries to have my vacation. And, rest is resilience,
Yes.
and rest is resistant. And I want to be able to practice what I preach.
Right.
Ugh. Ugh, ugh, ugh. So,
Oh, he's
we just
right.
that's kind of where I am today. I'm like, people are acting out this season, and I'm just gonna embrace it. Maybe it's time for the Bible.
Maybe it is time for the Bible and chaotics and bisexuals.
Can you?
So yeah, I'll read. You pray. Pray
Uh,
us in.
you're, I can pray us in. If you ins, the Lord works in mysterious ways. Let's pray. Holy God, thank you for this day and this opportunity to engage with your story. Thank you for meeting us in every face and encounter and through the testimony and power of all creation. Bless us as we read this word and bless all who will preach this Sunday, that we can draw out what your good news is in many a bad situation. And may this word that we draw out transform lives and our realities so that we may know and live into the abundant life which is already here. Pray this in all things. Turn the sounds of our hearts in your holy name.
Amen. So our gospel reading specifically for this Sunday is Matthew 16, 13 through 20. Now, when Jesus came to the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah. For flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. And that's the gossip.
You know, I like that the story is literally beginning with Jesus being like, what are they saying about me?
Oh my God. Although I would guess that Jesus is not like doing it from like a place of anxiety, but it's so comforting that it could be. Oh my God, he's just like us, you guys.
Oh my God. Fully God and fully human.
Fully uncle and fully
Fully
grandpa.
grandpa world without end.
Yeah.
And well, like, it's at the very least it's a strategic, or like, it could be anxiety, it could just be strategy, it could be all of the above, right? Like, where are we in this movement?
Right. How are we willing to read it has a lot to do with it too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But like, it's part of humanity wanting to know what other people are saying.
Right. So what's the gossip about me?
Yeah. And then him being like,
Yeah,
okay,
woof, that is peak anxiety. Wow.
and then
For me, when I'm like, but what does so and so think about me or my work? And like, that's just me being like, am I good enough?
oh my God. The lessons are hard to learn. I just think about how my mom for a really long time would give me a good Al-Anon lesson. Now, supposed to programs, take what you like, leave the rest. Complicated feelings. One of the things I like, something my mom would like share with me when I was like 13 and above, which is like, remember what people think about you is none of your business. And I would be like, okay, this is a hard lesson to learn, and I'm
Right?
still learning it.
Especially for like the Neon Genesis Evangelion generation, where you're like, oh my God, we live in other people's minds. Who am I really? Woof. That was not what my teenager self needed to hear from a cartoon. Let me tell you. Core memory achieved.
Jesus Christ, that makes so much sense. I don't know, like, and then Jesus is like, okay, but like, who do you all really think that I am? Not a test. This could be a test. It's not a test. I don't know what he's getting at, really. I'm just, but then it gets, then we meet the line that engages with my deep inner Catholicism. Rome, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah. Oh, what is it? No, who do you say that I am? You're the Messiah, son of the living God. And Jesus answered him, oh, blah, blah,
Blessed
blah.
you. Yeah.
Blessed are you. And I tell you, Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail. But I think, well, also a gentle reminder that as somebody from a long line of Roman Catholics, that I like to poke fun of my own family.
You're mumbling, so I didn't get any of that.
As somebody from a long line of Roman Catholics, I like to make fun of my own family, but also recognizing that in the United States, anti-papism and anti-Catholicism is one of the key and core tenets that was a unifying rally for the Ku Klux Klan. And so being mindful of that as a Protestant tradition, I think, is always important when we engage with this text. And to not engage in those narratives, even the anti-Semitic narratives. But here you have the opportunity to, unpack some of the anti-Roman Catholic narratives as we move towards better ecumenical cooperation. And that's not really the direction I want to head in, but that's a factor that I wanted to say.
Mm-hmm. No, but like that's super helpful because that is not something I would have even considered. Like, like I have my own cultural relationship with the text. So I'm super happy that like you're engaging from where you come from. And that's great. I will say my big relationship with the text through the years has been with this whole idea of Hades will not prevail against it, because very deliberately it's been translated and preached as the gates of hell will not prevail against it, making it kind of like a very passive, we're here and like, feeding into like this narrative of, evil is always attacking Christians, and but like Jesus promises that we're going to prevail type of thing, which is not what's happening here at all, right? Like this is pointing directly to Rome. Like the gates of Hades is putting like all the attention to the Roman Empire and saying that like the Roman Empire and its structure will not prevail against the kingdom of God. Full stop. Right? And like when we think about anti-imperialism as a Latin American and why this wasn't thought like that in Latin America, whew, there's a lot to unpack. Because like 100% a colonial preaching, right? Of making it this about like, oh, the place where you go if you're a bad person or a bad Christian or a non-Christian or whatever. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's not saying any of that. This is talking about like being anti-imperialist and resistance.
Oh.
Huh. I wonder why it wasn't being preached like that.
Yeah, and it's very curious actually, that connects to the first thing I said, about my cultural context and anti-Catholicism in the clan.
Again, you're mumbling.
About my context, well, I have these earphones on and it's different. My cultural context and the clan, and your cultural context and the text and the rock and where we are, and anti-Catholicism and Catholicism being pro-colonial is, in the 1960s, when the Roman Catholic Church did begin to preach the text in a way that taught the gates of Hades was an anti-Roman statement, and that Jesus was being...
Oh, no. Let me stop you right there, because this is beyond that. Like, I'm not just talking about like Roman Catholic, but this is very much like the United States using like Christian evangelical missionaries.
Oh, yeah.
To like dilute the anti-imperial preaching of the gospel in Latin America.
Oh yeah,
because this is like much modern thing. Like I wasn't even thinking about like Spain. I was thinking more about neocolonialism.
Oh, you were thinking about the thing that I was also talking about, which is like the anti-Catholicism and what would be a natural affinity for anti-Catholicism in the United States, predominantly white institutions with a long history of tangentially supporting the Klan. Huh, interesting. And it's so messed up. But this is also, it's all messed up, right? And that's also the fucked up mess that Jesus is dealing with in his reality at the same time. Like with this omnipresent imperial power that feels like there is no hope to overcome. And it feels like that there's nothing we can do to change the systems and the status to alleviate this thumb of oppression in which, the increasing inequities between society.
But it's not something we can't overcome, Matt, because like it also has to do with assimilation.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that assimilation was a big tool of the Roman Empire. It wasn't about a violent takeover necessarily. It like materially violent, let's put it like that. It was much more like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't remember the word in English, but like it was sinister. It was really like, we're not gonna starve you, we're not gonna kill you, we're just gonna commit cultural genocide.
Yeah.
Which is something that sadly our government has done time and time again. Hi, Marianne. So like to me, this is like, oh my God, this speaks to my reality so much. When we take into account like what does the empire do? Like it assimilates aggressively.
And it'll flex things. Shouldn't you be grateful that you're getting this bread and circus? And we'll show you that, if we wanted to, we could take this bread and circus away at any point.
Yeah, here are some roads just to remind you where everything should go. Like it's powerful when you start putting those pieces together, and it sounds so like it sounds like a conspiracy theory sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, should I just like calm down? But like there is like the anti-imperialist discourse right there.
Yeah, but and it's hard because we live within the empire, but you've one, were born outside the empire, and two, have lived and experienced community outside the empire, and I've been blessed to have those experiences in short windows of time. Um, and there is like another reality. It's like even outside. I think we have had this conversation a lot, which is like the United States is the weird place. I
Yes.
just think about. I was like talking about, oh, Hungary's weird. We paid our bills at the post office, and you're like, no, that's where everyone does it.
Yeah, literally, yeah. Like
Oh,
you don't have like it doesn't have to be like a special office for everything. Like we just go to like the convenience store and like pay our bills.
or like the fact that mobile data everywhere else is like $10 a month for unlimited. Like we live in a real where we don't have to, and this is all to say that well, I've thought a lot about, my mom's generation and like the boomers and the congregations I've served, which are majority like 50 plus, 60 plus even. Um, and like this anxiety and fear and how we've moved into polarization in some ways because it is deeply unsettling. I want to affirm that it's deeply unsettling to like this moment of coming to consciousness that like maybe most of the stuff I learned in school is propaganda. Maybe we are the Fire Nation.
Right.
Um, and it's like, how often was the line Hiroshima was horrible, but it was necessary because it could have been worse, was drilled every year in the head, despite the fact that the Japanese government was preparing to surrender, and we already knew that,
There is no war in passing say.
right? And this isn't to say that your parents are evil. Like all of this stuff is evil, and I think it's real because once again, empire thrives on this polarization and either or thinking.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, what it? And this is what's coming to terms of this text, right? Jesus is like, where are we located? What is our location here? And what are we doing as a movement, as my disciples, as a spiritual movement? Um, and as a revolutionary movement too.
Right. I think that we as in like the church sometimes neglect a lot of times neglect that this binding on earth and bound in heaven. Like this has a material reality. And this is something that I find myself preaching more and more these days. Because otherwise, this is just like a Lutheran version of thoughts and prayers, like the mystery. Like, not everything is about the mystery. Some things are a material reality in front of you. God's grace, a gift, a mystery, 100%. But also, God's grace has a material reality that we can experience.
Which this can be food and shelter and home.
Right. And community. Like to me is wild how often I forget until I'm like, oh yeah, this is not what it's like at all where I come from. What am I saying? Like, and notice myself like drinking the Kool-Aid of like rugged individualism and thinking that everything's about me and like my fights and my struggles. I'm like, clearly it's not.
Hmm. And all of it's bound together.
Right. I'm
Quite
not saying that
literally.
is not real, but like that is not exclusively about that.
Yeah. Oh, like I think how do I put it? Like this, but I guess like rather than assuming, I could ask a question, dare I say. Ooh, but like, can you clarify a little bit, like, what you mean about like binding on earth and binding on heaven? Like, what does
Like
that
for me,
mean to you?
that means living into these realities. Like, like if we are part of community, then things do change. And I think that when we are faced with and against empire, finding community, creating or making space for community is effectively like binding things on earth. It's not just a metaphysical thing. It's also about creating this new aspect, new option, new space, new reality. Oh my god, love it.
Buen
Enjoy.
provecho.
Yeah, thank you for watching. Just have a nice dinner with your hubby. Um, but no, it's 100% for me that, right? Like this binding on earth, on binding in heaven, like vision, right? Like to me, it was always thought at this like metaphysical, like, you know, weird thing that no one ever defined. Like no pastor would ever define like what the heck that meant. Now I'm just like, oh, this is like creative spaces where we can shine like this awareness of God is here in the brokenness. And we can be like, oh, let's participate in it rather than just waiting for, a wizard to like materialize things. I don't know, like it's half baked. I will own up to that, but like I'm really starting to move away from not move away, but like really giving like a material like framing to spiritual like conversations. I'm tired of the thoughts and prayers. I'm tired of like lazily defaulting to it's a mystery because I think that there are things that are definitely a mystery. I think there are things that are definitely there not to be understood, but to be in awe of. And community is not one of them. Community is to participate, community is to be in, community is to be experienced, is not just to witness and be like amazed by it. So that's where I am with that. I don't know if that necessarily answers your question though.
I think in part, I'm like binding. I'm like, what? Like binding, tying up. What are we casting? Like, and I think it's helpful in the sense of like this isn't just about like our feelings or our personal sentiments or personal emotions. And like if I really maybe I did understand in the sense that like, you know, like these ideas and these ideals and these values we uphold, they're not just like values for some sweet by and by. They can be realized here on earth as well. And in fact, when we live up to those values and we bind them on earth, they're already bound in heaven. It's like they're connected.
Yeah, like for me, it's part of that. Like, are we witnesses of like the good news, right? Like, and what does that mean, and what does that look like?
Or yeah, like we actually believe in what we preach.
Right, believe in Jesus. Step one.
Step one. And it's like just do it. I don't know. I'm just like we could think about but what is your framework plan for making community? And I'm like, okay, let's take a step back and like what if, hear me out, what if we just, talk to our neighbors.
Listen, for me,
Shared a meal.
the whole thing is spoiled when we start talking about community like it's like some resource to manage. I immediately don't trust you.
That makes sense.
You know, because that's exactly empire. That is creating like that's creating a quantifiable assessment of your resources. That's not creating community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's not even the role of the church in society. And like,
Unless you're part of the empire.
ah, but like, I think one of the things I've appreciated or like been affirmed about the ecclesiology of our Central American partners is that like everything's integrated. Like the idea of diaconia and justice work and imagining God's kingdom in action is connected to evangelism and growing the church and sharing the good news. Not just to grow the church, but to share the good news with their neighbors.
But the
And
shared is exactly.
and sometimes the good news is like, hey, we got this grant for nutrition enhancement. Have a kitchen garden. You get a kitchen garden. You get a kitchen garden. Why? Because we're a church and we share. And get this. People were curious about the community that materialized the alimentación, the alimentation, the nutritional needs of the community.
Literally feeding the community.
And it's like we can go through all of this, but what are we prioritizing and what are we thinking first? And like, how are we framing this reality? And what would happen? And I think, and it's scary and it's hard because we live in a world and an empire. The gates of Hades literally are trying and encroaching and literally killed somebody for saying, hey, if you stop giving these systems power over you, guess what? They no longer have power over you.
It's made up. It's a scam. The whole thing.
You know, and I remember, I bring her into the space, Cheryl Stewart Perrow. I wore her stole today when I preached, or the stole she gave me. So I'm like, and it's an important lesson and an important reminder because like it's tough work too. This kingdom work and kingdom participation. It's not all sunshines and rainbows because it requires change and conflict and consideration and resistance to very powerful, very evil entities. And she would always remind me, Matt, sometimes people are going to resent you because you are free.
Yep.
And the only thing you can do is keep on being free. Because you know who and whose you are. And maybe she would even say, you know, like God has already bound us on heaven.
Oh no, but the devil can cope. You know what I mean? Like it's just like
Oh, the devils. Oh, these people. Like.
Like yeah, that was just a whole like face journey there. I know, but I just think that this when we read the anti-imperial message of Jesus Christ, it makes so much sense because it's consistent with the work Jesus has been doing up to this point. You know what I mean? So, as a Latin American, once I start reading like that, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. He really is one of us. He gets us. You know where that's from. So, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. So there's this whole like evangelical, like, commercial campaign about Jesus being relatable. So their slogan is Jesus gets us. And then it's like the most upper middle class struggle that they present.
What is it? Jesus nos conoce?
No, bro, this is a US thing.
Oh. Maybe they saw that I watched too much Righteous Gemstones as a comfort show, so they're like, this was too. Oh my god.
Oh my gosh, I'm surprised you haven't heard about this because absolutely a thing. And it's like, you know, I'm sure that a middle class white person will be able to relate to that. I can't at all. And here Jesus saying, like, no, like we are absolutely against empire, and empire will not prevail. So this is for me gospel statement for this week. Like the church is not the empire. The church is whatever is anti-empire. So the church is queer. The church is gay. The church is trans. The church is poor. The church is revolutionary. You know, like the church is disabled and thriving. For me, that is a radical enough gospel statement. What is your gospel statement for this week?
That's a hard one to top. It's hard.
Yeah, just like if we extrapolate, and like you shouldn't extrapolate.
No, we don't
But
need
like no, but like Jesus basically saying like Black Lives Matter. Sure, is this anti-empire? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like what is anti-empire? What is anti
You know, I think for me
all of that?
the good news for I think it's that line, the gates of Hades will not prevail. And dare I say, it reminds me of a good old hymn. It's just ironically 666 in the ELW, which I think is what's it called? Sacred note singing and folk singing. And dare I say, even a little anti Appalachian, anti Irish bias to put that song as 666. But I digress. But the third verse is when I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down. God put on his righteous crown for my soul, for my soul. And it's what wondrous love. Which is like very complicated. Like, but if we think of it as people living in community and making community, as refugees and exiles, and if we think of this text of the gates of Hades will not prevail, and that that means that we need care, and it's a call to care and a call to community and a call to a trust that, like, in these worst moments, in the moments when our backs are against the walls, that there's something, that there's a force, there's a power within each and every one of us, within creation herself, that is present and powerful and caring and loving and transforming. And for me, quite frankly, like, was life-saving. That's what it's reminding me. The gates of Hades will not prevail was ultimately like the second time my father was incarcerated, I remember feeling like void and having this sense of falling and being caught by a power that would not allow me to fall into cynicism and nihilism. And I think there's the temptation too, because those things can be anti-empire as well. But the gates of Hades will not prevail, to me, is a promise that we're not alone and that together we're stronger. And so, like, trust in that mystical power, because it has a material reality. And it gets better and better the more we lean into it.
Amen.
but also like, you know, keep it on the DL. Don't tell everyone. We got to be strategic.
Okay, we're gonna have to debate that one, but maybe in some other episode.
Oh, that's a whole other discussion. That could be the anyway. What's the thing? Drink your water.
Yeah, care of self is care for creation, and you're doing great.
Take your
Continue-
meds.
Take your meds. Drink your water. We love you. Take care.
Bye.